And at one point, she actually said to me, well, you're going to have to do it. And I became suddenly a reluctant student. I became suddenly, I panicked actually in the face of it, really, because I didn't feel like I could even begin to be anything like her. And she said to me, it's not me you're going to be yourself. And that was really what she was doing the whole time, which really was miraculous. I am teaching you to be yourself, not me.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Campfire Circle. I'm your host, Tania, and I empower purpose-driven women in building influential personal brands that drive change and raise revenue. We all talk about getting a seat at the table, but why though? Who wants to sit in a stuffy boardroom anyway? Let's reimagine the ultimate space of leadership as a campfire circle, where we share stories that inspire movements, build brave communities to huddle together with for warmth, and where there is always room. Come sit with us. Adelia Sandoval is the spiritual overseer and cultural director for the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians, Acknowledgements Nation, the indigenous people of Orange County, California. Adelia shares her Acknowledgement culture through art, writing, storytelling, and singing. She's a ceremonial leader, songkeeper, wisdom holder, tribal teacher, and healer. Adelia, I'm so happy to be with you today. Welcome.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here. I'm excited about, sharing this time with you.
Me too. Anytime we get to spend time together is time very well spent in my book. And you and I actually met, at this point, over a decade ago. And you have been maybe even 12 years or more. You have been such a bright light in my life. And also for the women that, you would serve at the nonprofit organization we worked with, helping women and families get sober from addiction.
Yes.
I want to really thank you for that. And really starting off, I know you were a storyteller, and I'd love for you to tell me the story of your becoming the spiritual leader for the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians. Tell me more.
Well, it actually started over 25 years ago. I was looking for a teacher that taught our tradition rather than, our tradition. When I say that, the Acknowledgements people, the people of this area, of this land that I'm a member of that tribe. And there's a lot of teachers out there when it comes to Native American teachings and this and that about Native Americans. But I wanted to learn our traditions in our way. And so I was actually 39 years old when I started studying because I never could find a teacher. And then one day I heard that there was a woman teaching down in San Clemente at one of our sacred villages called Panhe, which is actually on Camp Pendleton. And they were preparing for a great ceremony. And so I went down there and I said, hey, I want to learn. I want to be part of this. And she looked at me and she said, okay. And she kind of looked at me like almost like I was a specimen in a way. It was kind of like really kind of confronting it. But at the same time, she had this gorgeous smile and her eyes sparkled. And I felt really safe all of a sudden. It's like, oh, I can, I feel good around her. So she just took me in and immediately started sharing with me. And I discovered that I was actually a descendant of a few villages. And because of that, I was in a certain clan, and I discovered that I was also in the Bear clan. And so this particular ceremony brought me to learn about what it was to be in the Bear clan and also to be a bear dancer, which I don't share that too often because it seems like it's a very private thing. But there was something really wonderful that I discovered there, that I had a connection to the bears, actually. And that particular ceremony took place in 2001. And it was probably the most powerful ceremony that I think I've ever been part of. And the 4 clans of our tribal nation danced in that ceremony. And it was all night and for a couple of days. And so when it was all over and done with, I said, okay, what's next? It was so powerful and so amazing. but I wanted to know more. So I said, I would like to know what's next. I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. And she goes, well, if you want to come and study with me, she goes, but it's going to be a commitment and time. And I said, I have it. So, and she lived far from our tribal office, which is in San Juan Capistrano. And I had to drive out to almost to Julian to go to her house. She lived in the hills in the mountains up there. So I would drive, and I drove every Monday to go and see her. And I would just sit and listen. And she would teach me this, and she would teach me that. And then, and I had a desire to learn more songs. And so she says, okay, then I'm going to teach you the songs. And then what I would like you to do is I would like you to go and teach the women the songs that I teach you. So I became like the go-between between her and the rest of the people, because it was hard for her to get out there. And so I just kept doing that over the years. And she said to me that, she wanted me to shine. She wanted me to grow and to be strong in what I was learning from her so that I could teach others. And as time went on, people began to accept what she was teaching through me. So as she was the ceremonial leader as well. So when we had ceremonies, she would give me direction on what to do. And I would go and I would talk to the people, and we would get people to do certain things. I mean, sometimes it was literally going out in the creek and, and gathering willow sticks for this and that, or for, there was all kinds of physical challenges as well. So it wasn't just learning information. It was actually doing something. And also learning the songs and teaching the songs, and then learning the dances and teaching the dances for particular ceremonies. So it was a pretty phenomenal education for me. And I learned a great deal. I also learned about what it was to listen, and what it was to be silent, and what it was just to watch and observe things, and to notice how people reacted to things. There was not just information learning, it was a way of being learning. And so as time went on, my responsibilities got more and more, because she started getting physically ill. So it was very difficult for her to come out during even ceremonies. So she gave me more and more responsibility. And when she got very ill, where she really was bedridden, that was a really hard time, because, to see my teacher, the woman who I had, literally turned myself over to, there would never in the back of my mind did I ever think that I would replace her or do anything like that. I would just wanted to share what she had to share with me, and to help people to learn about who we are as a Hashiman people. But as she got closer and closer to, not being able to really do much, she began to talk about, she goes, you're going to have to continue on. So she'd say little phrases like that, or, she goes, well, it's going to be up to you. And at one point she actually said to me, well, you're going to have to do it. And I became suddenly a reluctant student. I became suddenly, I panicked actually in the face of it, really, because I didn't feel like I could even begin to be anything like her. And she said to me, it's not me you're going to be yourself. And that was really what she was doing the whole time, which really was miraculous. I am teaching you to be yourself, not me, is what she was saying. And I get teary-eyed about it, because she was, the most phenomenal person. And, and I realized she would put her little finger up. There's so much to learn. She goes, I've given you about this much. And I go, uh-oh. But she didn't expect me to learn everything, which I loved that. And then she goes, and you're not here to save the tribe. You're not here to save the people. She took that burden off me, because sometimes I felt like I had to do something to make things better, or to make people understand, or to get them to do certain things. And then when she said that to me, it was like I was able to breathe again, because I did kind of feel that way at times. It's like, oh, if I got to get him to do this, or I got to get him to do that. So anyway, I finally agreed. And I said, okay, then I will do what you ask of me. And I think that was something that she was waiting to hear, because it wasn't too long after that she let go of this physical body that she had here and to go off and to do something wonderful, I'm sure, because she did believe that that's what we do. We go to the sacred resting grounds of our ancestors, she said. And there's a name for it in a way to get up there, so to speak, and it's part of the Milky Way galaxy. But she wanted me to know that that she had given me enough. She had given me everything that I needed to know to do what she wanted me to do. So I've never called myself what we call her, which is a very special word, which I don't use in recordings. But so I now call myself, instead of a spiritual leader, because that sounds so strange. Like, what does that mean? Oh, I'm here to lead the people on this spiritual path. I consider myself a spiritual overseer. In other words, I oversee the people. If I see a family that's having trouble with a loved one who's sick, I say, well, here I am. What is it that you need me to do? Or just to sit and be, or I sing a healing song for someone, or I counsel, or, I do a wedding for, a young couple in the tribe, things like that, whatever comes along, I try to be that and to be that person for them. And then at times she comes to me in my dreams or in my thoughts. And so she's constantly guiding me. This is my feeling. Whether it's actually happening, I don't know, but sometimes it's very strong. And so there's a lot of work that I yet have to do in my life that I want to do, to accomplish certain things for the people so that they have enough of her information to continue on even after I'm gone. So what I see is that what I do this day, I don't do it for myself. I do it for the generations to come, which is a very common phrase in the Native American culture of, when I say Native American culture, I'm talking about that whole culture, no matter what tribe, is that what we do this day, we do for the generations to come. And that is really a big part of the work that all of us are doing.
I am almost speechless because that was so beautiful. And I know that you and I, Adelia, have spoken in the past about feelings of maybe imposter syndrome or feeling like maybe, are we the right ones? Are we the right ones to do this work? And you spoke so beautifully about how you, how you banish the spirit of imposter syndrome by realizing you just have to be more of yourself and you are divinely guided to do this work. Is there anything else that really helps you when maybe some of these feelings come up?
Well, I also have a tremendous faith, something that was instilled in me from my grandmother to my mother to myself. When I say faith, it's a faith that was actually in a specific religious connotation. It would be Catholic. So, because when the Spanish missionaries came, our ancestors, those in the mission system became Catholics. And what I say when I talk about that, because some people have a really hard time with that whole period of history, which I can understand. But what I say is that our ancestors were deeply spiritual people before the missionaries came. And I know this by the songs and the stories that have come down through the generations. And how I learned about prayer and all of that was also through my grandmother and my mother. And my grandmother was a very devout Catholic woman, but she had her own way of doing things. And I used to spend every weekend over there when I was little. And so she would light candles she had all these saints, I call them statues of saints. And she would light her candles and I would just be in awe of that, and I saw that she was such a devoted woman. So that was one of my favorite things about being over at her house was they call it santitos and these little saints. But, and yet she was always so happy. My grandmother was very happy and she also could be serious, but she had such a diligence, in the way she did things and the way she cleaned, but also in the way she made food for all of us, by snapping the beans. And she would show me these things. And so we'd sit on the porch and we would do these things, and she would teach me. And I really loved that. And so I learned her way of, prayer, but also her way of just, you just do one bean and then the next bean and the next bean, until everything is done, that kind of thing.
One bean at a time.
Yeah, at a time. And then my mother also had a tremendous devotion, and she was very prayerful. And she taught me about prayer when I was very little. And I won't go through that whole story of, how that, why, there's a cute little story, but I won't go into it now because it seems to be long. But what I did is I learned about what prayer was because my mother taught me. And out of doing that, I had this sense of peace because I was a very anxious child. I had a lot of fears and a lot of, for being a little bundle of energy. And so my mother realized she needed to help me with that. And I'm really glad that she did. And one of the ways that she helped me with that was to teach me about prayer and how to be, to ask to be helped. And I learned that at an early age. And that particular way of being has helped me throughout my whole entire life. And I've learned in my own way how to work with that. And that also helped me in learning from Kachi about the spiritual ways of our people, which that, so I kind of like took the two, the Catholic and the native Yahashiman teaching, and I kind of weaved it together for my own basket, so to speak. And a lot of people do that. I've talked to many Native Americans, especially those in the mission who have grown up as a result of the mission system. And a lot of them have learned how to do that too. So I'm not alone in that. And it's actually a beautiful.
Oh, well, I think you explained it well. And I got the picture that it might make you feel like you don't have to have all the answers because you're divinely guided, right?
Yeah. Yes, because that's true. I love that. That's a perfect. I do not have to have all the answers. It's kind of like the same thing when Kachi says, you're not here to save the people. And then when I realized, oh, that's already been done. Somebody did that for everybody. Somebody already did that. However you want to call that particular person. So it's been done. So why should I have to be doing that? No. And so what I do is I'm just here to be helpful. And I really like that because, it doesn't mean I have to be anywhere or be somebody or have a title or, or anything like that. I'm just here to be helpful. Yeah. And that sometimes can mean someone calling me and say, come and bless my relative that's dying. And I'll go, okay, I'll be there.
Yeah. And I've seen that firsthand, I've seen that firsthand over the last decade. And, I don't know if you would consider yourself this way. I know that titles are not important necessarily to you or in general, but I see you as an organizer, right? I see you as an activist, from protesting nuclear waste storage upon sacred ancestral lands, to advocating for cities in Orange County to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and probably so many more things that I don't even know about, right? And so those are just a few things off the top of my mind. Yeah. So I guess, what is my question here? I would love to know your perspective on how do you start that ripple effect to create that movement for change?
Well, I think one of the things that motivates me is which is really important to bring up, is I have a very important relationship with the earth, with what we call our Mother Earth. I know that there's a better way to be when it comes to her. And, and what I realize is human beings have gotten away from that over the centuries. They've gotten away from what is that relationship. And this is one thing I know, is that we all come from indigenous peoples. All of us do. We go way back far enough. There are our ancestors, no matter what color we are, no matter what country we are coming from, no matter what nationality we would say we are, we go back far enough. Our ancestors all lived on the earth. They touched the earth. They did things, they danced on the earth. They sang on the earth. They lived off of the beauty of the trees and the grasses and things that grew, and they had relationship with that, and they knew the language of that time. And so I think that since I know that about everyone, I know that there's some way to reach them regarding that, and to let them know that we can get back to that in some way. It may be very different. Of course it will, because, there's so much technology and things that have happened over the centuries. But there's a way of being that we can start from the very beginning and then come from that place, one day I was talking to a whole bunch of, I was at the Long Beach Convention Center, and it would just happen I was at this conference for city planners, and especially the environmental city planner part, where a lot of the young people that were there had been part of environmental studies. And they were, part of cities that were learning about how can they work with the environment in a city planning kind of way. So, and I just shared with them that, like, I could see, they were all on their computers and they had these ideas they wanted to accomplish, and maybe they had education behind that, and so they had some information, environmental information, and they were working, but yet it wasn't quite jiving all the way. And I said, that's when you call on the earth. You call on the Mother Earth to help you, because she's always going to be there to inspire you, because I know that each one of those has an ancestral line that goes all the way back to the earth. So I said, call upon that. And, the earth will find you through, if you're on the 5th story at your computer and you're working away, she's going to find you through all that it takes to find you, to inspire you to come up with a solution to whatever question you're asking. And it's like, I remember looking out on the crowd and seeing their faces, their eyes got big. It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I know enough about a human being to know that they do have a connection to the earth. They just forgot, or somehow it got muddied up or something. And so it's just that simple. And another way that I rephrase that is a return to innocence, a return to earth innocence. It's like, there's still hope for the human race. I do believe that, and I do get upset. I get upset when I'm out, talking about nuclear waste. I have this whole thing I've been talking about lately because I've been dealing with the Huntington Beach desalination, Poseidon desalination plant. The possibility of that happening in Huntington Beach is just so awful. And it's not that I'm against, business and all of that, but it's the way that it comes about. So everything starts with a good idea. So it looks like, like nuclear energy, the use of nuclear energy was done with a good idea. Oh, clean energy. We need clean energy. Look at all the coal burning and all the, all that has come from that, and the sicknesses and the lung diseases and everything like that. So somebody said, well, nuclear energy is clean. So they started coming up with these nuclear plants and having all of this, but someone didn't think it all the way through to the end. Like, well, now we have all this nuclear waste, and it's very volatile, and it has a shelf life of thousands of years. It doesn't just disappear. What are we going to do? And so now we have a huge conundrum. I'll use that word. What are we going to do with the waste? Well, the same thing is happening with the desalination plant, because one, it's going to have this intake valve, so they're going to cut, and there's going to be marine life that's going to be challenged and damaged and killed. And then what do we do with all this salt brine? Well, some people say, oh, they're going to sell it. And then they say, well, they're going to put it back into the ocean. And then I'm going, well, that's going to mess up the whole balance of the salt. We all know what it's like to put too much salt on our dinner at night. And so in the morning, we're puffy and everything. Well, how is that going to affect the wetlands and the coast along the edges, with all that too much salt? So everything, these are the kind of things, think all the way through to the end, instead of thinking, how are we going to make more money? So that's one of my thoughts.
I would love for you to tell me from your perspective why land acknowledgements are so powerful and what you believe should be included in an acknowledgement.
Well, I think it's really important to know, wherever you live, who was there before, because it makes a big difference on, how things are and how, you can be part of all of that. I was just talking to someone yesterday morning. She happened to be a Hispanic woman. And I told her, I was part of the local tribe. She goes, oh, I've never heard of that. And I told her about the Hashiman people, about the mission in San Juan Capistrano. I told her about the people of the land and, how we live here for thousands of years. And she was just totally blown away. And she's been in the United States for like 15, almost 20 years, and she's never heard of it. So that's just an example of, people don't know, where they're living, what the history of that place is. I think it gives you a sense of belonging when you learn about that. So land acknowledgement, I think it's good for others to acknowledge the land and who was here, because it shows then that there's some opening. There's an opening there. And I also know, I have a sense that land acknowledgements is kind of like being politically correct. I've noticed that too. And you know what? Okay. Let's say that is okay. And maybe, just maybe, out of that process, they'll get what it means. To be aware that there was something happening here before whatever that group or organization, there was something here already, and they acknowledge that and they want to honor that, and out of respect. So it's really a lot about respect and about being willing to be humble enough to say, I am not this person just coming in and taking over, or, trying to make it, all about me, or whatever, but rather humbly coming and saying, oh, we want to thank you for, it's not so much allowing us to be here, because, that sounds kind of odd to me, but to come and let's be together. Let's celebrate.
Yeah. Well, what I can say for sure is I've seen you in action do this with the women that we served, and there was a difference in their faces, in their energy, in their spirit before you came and afterwards, and I will say that the women we served were struggling with addiction, which is a disease of isolation. And after you came in and, did ceremony and acknowledged the land of what came before us, there was like a connection point there. It was like that, that veil of separation went away. And it was like, no, we are all connected, right? We are all connected. And so sharing these stories helps connect us. They help bind us in a really strong way. And so, I live by the Newport Back Bay, and I spend a lot of time there walking Gary. I know you spend a lot of time in San Juan Capistrano and Tustin. And I'm just wondering, and I'm sure some of these stories have been lost, but can you share any of the stories of what the village system was like here in Orange County before we were here?
Well, when you say Newport Back Bay, that was a village. And it was probably one of the largest villages of Genga. And Mariah and I, we go and we paddle out there on the ocean, on the bay. We go out there, and so kayaking and watching all the birds flying all around. Even Libby, I got to have her in between my legs, my little dog, in between my legs, sitting on the kayak, and she's like, looking for the bird. Anyway, yeah, we had the most incredible village system. If you could just use your imagination and see, let's get rid of all the freeways in our imagination. Let's get rid of all the buildings and everything. Everything is just basically California native plants and bushes and trees and everything. It's just really kind of semi-arid in some areas along the coast. There's just teams of marsh grasses and birds and all kinds of creatures, just going around the edges, and you can see the dolphins playing in the ocean. I mean, it's just very idyllic. And the creeks are swollen with water, and there's steelhead trout jumping up in the air, and there's a heck of a lot of bears around. I mean, just that kind of idyllic beauty of the coastline. And yet there were hundreds of villages. It wasn't just a handful of villages. It was hundreds of villages. And the list, I don't have that list. I got to get that list. But I just read these names of these villages, and it was just phenomenal to me how many there were before the European people came. And but they had a very wonderful system, and it was connected by these pathways. So I tell people, let's say we had a drone and we could get so high and look down. It would, what I call is kind of like a network or a matrix of villages. And it had a special name called Nopetum, which is kind of like a word like brotherhood, but it wasn't necessarily brother. It was just this kind of system, a way that a particular village leader And there was whatever was going on depending on their geographic location. So their work was to be the best village they could be. And then when the time came for everyone to gather for ceremony, for great, events, then everybody came from all the villages to wait, maybe one host village to have this celebration. And so people would bring all the things they had to share, and the village host would make sure that everyone also was well taken care of. So it was this beautiful system that they had created, and it worked because it worked for thousands of years. We have some archaeological reports that we've studied that show that probably for 12 to 16,000 years there was no outside influence. In other words, no large interruption of the culture that the people that lived, because they know by the shell midden, that's archaeological, when you see a lot of broken pieces of shells laying around, that usually indicates that there must have been people living there. And then if they dig deeper, they can see how deep is that shell midden go, and that kind of gives them an idea of how old that village site is. But they didn't there has been really no evidence that our ancestors were warring kind of people. In other words, they weren't, trying to, take over another village system. And they were just living their lives. And they gathered to share what they had with others from the north and from the east. It wasn't about conquering them. It wasn't about taking over their part. I mean, I've heard there were squabbles over the kinds of oak trees they had, but they learned about how to increase the capacity of a really good oak tree, by saving, the acorn and then planting it. And then, so they weren't just hunter gatherers. They were very smart in how they increased the capacity of the acorn, the oak tree.
Well, and I want to focus in on how you shared there wasn't really a lot of warring or conflict necessarily. It was about collaboration.
And you know what they love to do? Play games.
Mm.
Yeah. There was, the Genga, the area where you live. There is a lot of archaeological data to show they found hundreds of what we call game pieces. There was a lot of rocks that are made perfectly round, which can you imagine making a rock round so that it rolls just like a bowling ball in a way, but smaller, and sticks that they used for knocking them around, and all kinds of different games that they played. I think, that's a people that know how to have fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we also knew that they loved to sing. They sang for everything. They sang in the morning when the sun came up. They sang at night when the stars were out. They sang for hunting, for gathering, for basket weaving, for, having food, songs for every occasion, songs to honor particular birds, songs to honor the bear or the deer, and the eagle. And so it was a way for them to create an energy that they knew about energy. They knew about how to manifest energy. So they use that through song. That's, a lot of, sometimes people go, oh, well, what does that mean in English? Well, a lot of the sounds that we sing, they're vocables. That's a linguistic term, but it doesn't have a direct interpretation in any language. It has the ability to create an energy, and we know that already from studies of music and notes and the way things are saying, the tones of things have a certain energy. And I think that's going to become something even more and more prevalent as we go on, that sound actually can heal. Mm-hmm. We know that already. So our ancestors were very aware of that. So they would sing to create a certain energy. And in ceremony, I've discovered that in the way the songs are sung and the way that they're done is to produce a certain result. And that is what ceremony is. It's a way to create in a way that produces a certain result. So there was an intention behind it.
So much we can learn. So much we can learn. I have one last question for you. And it goes back to what you shared earlier, which is the tribal saying around what we do today, we do for generations to come, right? It's not for myself. And so, just like we are remembering now ancestors from the past, we are going to be the ancestors for our future generations. So, what do you hope they say about us?
I never thought it from that angle. That's a good one. Tanya, you got me there. Gosh, well, I would say it's kind of like how I think about my ancestors. And someone told me one day, oh, I think you think really highly of almost like it was like wrong to think highly of my ancestors. And I said, you know what? I romanticize my ancestors because somehow, some way, through how it got along to me and how when I think of them and experience that, I feel good. I'm sad sometimes too, because I know they had to make huge, very difficult decisions at a certain point in the history of our people in order that I'm alive today. And I got that one day and I sobbed. I sobbed to know that was a hard decision. They had to almost like succumb to another completely different culture in order to live. Because if they had fought back or resisted that to such a large degree, they would not be alive. And therefore, they wouldn't have been able to continue life. So I got that one day. It was heavy duty. But I think even knowing that, what kind of people would do that? People that cared about the future. People that cared and knew that it was very vital for something of our culture to continue on. And so therefore, I hope that those future generations look back and say, oh, look at what they did, those decisions that they had to make so that I have this song here to sing for you today. That I have this story to tell you today, to teach you about the beauty of our Mother Earth. So I hope they romanticize us, just like we do ours.
Well, and no, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that I'm going to take what you said and really hold that in my heart, because a lot of the things we have to do as change makers, as purpose-driven women, the people listening to this podcast, it's hard. We are making hard decisions on a daily basis, whether we're running a nonprofit, whether we're running a business, whatever it is that we're doing, whether we're creating a movement, it is hard on a daily basis. But without that hard work, I mean, just think about the future generations and what they would not have if we aren't doing this hard work, right? It's not for us. It's not for us. It's for the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bigger than us.
Yes. It's bigger than.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your heart with us today. I just love and appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Tanya, for doing this work that you're doing, giving us all the opportunity to share our story. And that's a good thing. Very good. It's a good thing because sharing our story creates that ripple impact, I think. And even if one person hears our story and does something different because of it, I mean, you just change the trajectory of the world in a good way. In a good way. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me and to share with me and to do this good work so that others can benefit from our time together. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, then. All right. What'd you think? Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or even better, reach out and let me know through lumosmarketing.co. Yes, that's Lumos, as in the illumination spell from Harry Potter. Because when you shine, magical things happen. You can get social with me on LinkedIn, and of course, check out the show notes to stay in touch with our guests. Let's talk soon.